Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Sound good?
Yes, sir! I know who I am!
Did IQs just drop shot
That could have
while I was
been
away?
better.
I have a plan. I like this
All
shit.
You know, it's exciting.
Dance off, bro.
It is your
Me and you.
destiny.
Welcome to the Atlantic Screen Connection Podcast.
Let the games begin.
Hello and welcome to the Atlantic Screen Connection Podcast with Jason and Lee. I'm Jason.
I'm Lee.
And this week we are going to be delineating our top films of 2017.
Yeah. Fuck you, 2017. It's over.
It's over, done. I just want to make sure that you guys understand that we're not saying that these are the best films of 2017. These are going to be what we call our top films, our favorite watches, the favorite
Yeah,
ones.
the ones we saw. I mean, we'll try and remind you which ones we haven't seen as we go along, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're in Ireland, I'm in Quebec, okay? And that's it. This isn't Los Angeles, this isn't New York, where they have all the movies all the time before everyone else. Even in Toronto, I mean, I get some of those movies sometimes, you know? And so there's a list of, like today, I will not be mentioning BPM. I haven't had a chance to watch Florida Project. Phantom Thread, I don't even know when the hell that's being released here.
It's sometime this month, maybe? I don't know.
I know The Shape of Water just got here, so I can probably go see that. Mudbound, I haven't had a chance to get to. Personal Shopper, I haven't had a chance to get to. Lady Bird is only being released at the end of January here. And Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I think it came and it was here for one day.
Yeah, it's coming out like later this month as well, you know. So lots of those I've seen Shape of Water, but technically it didn't come out in 2017. I've seen it going to a festival. I don't feel like I can count it because the way I've worked my list is based off UK dates, and so that's why a lot of the there's Oscar films from last year that's gonna throw up a couple of people that weren't on my list last year. If you go back to it, and you'll be like, oh, that was a great film. What the fuck wasn't that doing on my top 10? And I was like, yeah, because it wasn't out. It wasn't out till like January or February, and same again here. There's a lot of the films you just met, like Lady Bird, for example, heard great things about. I don't think it's out here till February. I think it's out in the same week as Shape of Water here, and you know, so I decided that was the best way to handle it, to put myself in the mind frame. What if I were just working with what I got?
No, that's it. And so I mean, like the movies that I just listed for me are the ones that I will get to eventually, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. The thing is that I just haven't had a chance either because they're not here, or I just even if I had a screener for one of them, I just didn't sit down to watch it. You know? I've been on movie overload, to be honest. And after this episode, I'm going to have to take a break because my brain is just fucking fried. I just want to sit down and enjoy something. You know, I've been watching a little bit more basketball, and that's been doing a good job on my brain.
Yeah. You think these lists are small this year. Wait till we get to next year. Jesus Christ.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. That's why I see these are my favorite films, and maybe not the best films, but they're the ones that actually had an impact on me and that I really, really will love revisiting time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the format, we do have top 10s. You might have actual number 10. I definitely have a 10. Like a short list, but the format is mostly going to be honorable mentions are going to be there. There's going to be a long list of those. They're like favorite films that didn't make the cut. Yeah. And we'll clarify which ones made our top 10 as we go along, something like that.
There are movies on the list that we've already talked about on other shows, and we haven't shied away from doing that as well. So
absolutely.
If you're tuning in just now, well, go back and listen to those shows after.
Yeah, we'll point you in the direction each time. Because there's definitely a number on here that I think, you know, whatever I'm going to say today, I've said it better before.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. But these are the ones that stuck in my head, so I'm looking forward to this. But before we get to our honorable mentions, you had mentioned to me just before we started recording that you had two films that you weren't too high on, that you wanted to kind of put out there so that people could either watch to have a really terrible time or just watch ironically.
I think there's something to be gained from pointing out the bad films sometimes, only because I'm saving you all the hassle, because I think these are interesting examples of bad films There's other bad films that are less interesting to talk about, like Sing. There's nothing to talk about Sing, and I didn't see the Emoji Movie, and I'm sure it would have been there too. I know, I can smell how bad that one was.
I forbade my daughters from seeing it.
Yeah.
Because they were like, hey, we want to see the Emoji Movie. I was like, listen, this is my money, and no.
Yeah, not
so
your fucking
I'm not
life.
taking you to see that. Fuck that. Thing is, not just that. I mean, my daughters, like I've mentioned this before, they like a little bit more complicated movies, and this is just bright colors and bullshit.
Yeah,
and I don't want to. And it just I could smell the greed come off the screen when I saw the trailer for that fucking piece of shit.
It's incredible. Like this is the thing. At least when Big Picture Reviews was going, I sent Lawrence to see it. Oh no, you know what? He's seen it on his own accord to surprise me with a review because I would never ask him to do. And he came back. His review was an emoticon, and it was like an unpleased emoticon, and he gave it an F. But like off the site, he was describing some of the scenes and content of the film to me, and holy shit, this is it sounds incredible. Like morbid curiosity wants me to go and check it out just to see like how low things can go, how like you can cram in a Just Dance app and a fucking Candy Crush app into a narrative and pretend it's something to do with actually telling the story and not just cynical money grabbing crap and flying on Twitter birds to save the day. I mean, like there's insane shit happens in this film that does sound like a surrealist nightmare, like a film that details existentialist capitalist dread in all its colorful glory, but like. I see that so much every day. I don't know if I could ever fucking put myself through it.
I don't know. It sounded like to me anyway. When they probably watched Wreck-It Ralph and say, how can we make this shitty?
Exactly.
It really feels that that's what the Emoji Movie was. But anyway, we don't want to talk anymore about that. We're actually spending too much time. There's probably a good movie we should have mentioned before.
Movie. Absolutely.
So get to the ones that you kind of just want to give a little bitch slap to, and we can move on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the two films, they both have a common thread, which is that they're both adaptations of Japanese work. The first is Ghost in the Shell that came out this year. The remake, I mean, it's an adaptation to an extent, but it's also a semi-remake of the anime film that was based on the manga that came before it. It's RoboCop. It's just RoboCop. And it's nowhere near as good as actual RoboCop.
Oh boy, I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of if you've seen one film and see how Americans adapt films that are from other countries, I think it's another perfect proto-example of how to miss the point in attempting to appease mass audiences. I think it's fascinating as an insight to the minds of American film production. It's not a terrible film, that's the thing. It's hard to say. Much of the films that I've seen this year were terrible, like Ghost in the Shell is an applicably fine film. You can watch it. It's a poor man's RoboCop, but it's a RoboCop, so I mean it's a film. It's got like an us v them story, and it sometimes raises some interesting questions about the nature of consent, especially when it comes to like governments. But like all of that was done so much better and such a more riveting way in the original anime. And it kind of, on its own terms, it's an okay film that looks bad in comparison, but in terms of the scale of how good the anime was next to it, it hurts it that much more because it's such a dumbing down and watering down of the material. So I only want to put it on the list just to say, go see the original material. See it after you see the anime to see how it compares. I think it's interesting to look at films like that sometimes. So that's why I wanted to put that on there. The other one is the Netflix adaptation of Death Note. Death Note's something I absolutely love. I've read the manga. I've watched the anime. I rewatched it after seeing this film to see just how off the mark it was. Because it's not a super long series. It's only got about 30 episodes or something like that. And it's so good. It's just one of those perfectly realized moral existential questions. And the Netflix adaptation makes it into a sort of story about some geek whose girlfriend gets hard for him every time he kills people. And that's like, it's not, it's incredible. Like, again, a great example of how American directors miss the point. Although I will say the American direction of this is getting a lot of hate, and it's totally unfair. The director is Adam Wingard, I think his name. He's directed some horror films, some notable ones, I think, that people actually do know. And what he was trying to do was make it into something akin to a American high school traditional horror. Something like Prom Night, those kind of films. And what he was doing, I believe, was an interesting idea. He was setting it up to be like a proper Americanization and also kind of a self-parody in that sense. So there was good stuff there. The real issue is that there are 4 fucking writers on this film, and there's way too many cooks. The film is totally all over the place. It is at one point attempting to be a send-up of the original Death Note. At one point, somewhat, I think Wingard himself was trying to give his vision of interpreting the material for American audiences in an actual American traditional way. There's another writer who clearly likes his genre horror and was trying to work in like tropes of that. And there is another person, I don't know, who was just off the set for a John Green book and was trying to work in a sort of tragic teenage coming of age romance into the narrative, and none of it works. Together, they're 4 totally different things. Their whole threads. You know it's telling when a film ends, and it shows you bloopers of the filming of this film, and it's a drama horror. You know, like it's not a comedy. But it's ending like how much fun it was to film this, as if like they know it was never going to work. And
oh Jesus,
it's like an admission almost. And I think that's good. There are some good performances and stuff in here. I really liked Keith Stanfield. He plays the person who goes missing at the very start of Get Out.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, he's the guy who yells "Get out."
Yeah. Exactly. That guy. He was excellent in this film. He does a very shaky interpretation of the character L from the anime, and it's a really good version. I really liked it. I think there's so many ways to fuck up bringing this character to screen, and he doesn't do it. You know, so there are points like that, but that's all details. All I wanted to say was definitely didn't work in its own right because it couldn't tell its own version of the story cohesively. Okay. So I think, again, another exciting thing for people who want to see certain bad examples of films, there's a lot to learn, I feel, from bad examples. I think a lot of people could gain something, and that's why I wanted to point them out. There's a lot of crap films this year, but who cares? Those are the ones that are interesting, at least, for being for how crap they are.
Yeah, I don't have any bad films or worst films or anything like that. There was one that I wanted to throw out there just to piss people off, but I decided to not do that.
Rein yourself in.
Because it's by no means a bad movie at all. It was just me just kind of just poking fun just for fun. So I won't do that this year. But I do want to say this. As we move on to our honorable mentions and the list, Lee and I haven't even disclosed our list to each other. So that we could actually surprise each other as we move along. I think I told you what my top films are just because I was hesitant between the two because I have 2 different reactions to them, but I love them equally. But exactly. I'll get to that a little bit later. Well, all right, I'm going to start with my honorable mention, the one at the bottom of my list. And the reason why it's at the bottom of my list for honorable mentions is because it's not about the movie itself. It's about the experience I had in the movie theater watching this film and also the subsequent discussion I had with Lee about it. And my first honorable mention of 2017 is Fate of the Furious.
Oh, of course.
And I understand that most of you guys are going to be like, what the fuck, Jason? Are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, I'm not kidding you. And the reason I'm not kidding you is because I had such a fun time watching that piece of junk. For exactly what it was. I went with my friend Juan to the movie theater. He first of all, he didn't believe that that's exactly what I wanted to go see because Lee and I had decided that we were going to intellectualize the entire film. It turned out to be one of my favorite shows to record.
Absolutely.
And so I think that just out of pure experience for 2017, Fate of the Furious has to go on my honorable mentions because it provided me with so much fucking joy that it would be stupid of me to not include it on the list. So that would be my number 1 honorable mention. All right, so that was my joke honorable mention, the one that that I had a really fun time doing. Now, the more serious honorable mentions are movies that I really had a great time watching because of pure cinematic addiction, if you will. The fact that I liked that there were these crazy ideas that people were trying. I thought it was really fun to see these things. So this, no particular order, no particular format or anything like that. So I'm just going to name them as they come. Yeah. Okay, I have a list here and I'll just pick and choose from them. One of my favorite films of the year, which is going to be an honorable mention, it doesn't go in my top films, is a film called Patty Cakes that I just recently watched. And to me, it was the movie that 8 Mile wanted to be without Eminem. And it's about this woman who is I don't know what other term to use as instead of overweight. So I'm really sorry. I don't mean to be insulting or anything like that. And she is a fascinating actor. I don't have her name. I don't know who directed it. I'm really sorry. But if ever you guys get a chance to watch the movie Patty Cakes, it's about this band of weird rebels that have decided that they're going to work together in order to make rap music or hip hop music. And they're just really good at it. It's set in New Jersey. And to me, it's a really fun, interesting coming of age story that is paint by numbers, but at the same time, very heartwarming. And so if ever you guys get a chance to watch Patty Cakes, I highly recommend it. I had a great time. The music is great. The performances are all solid. And it's just a really great time, man. I was one of the movies that I watched, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. And Andrew from AB Film Review is the one who said, hey, check this out. I'm pretty sure you're going to like it. And he was 100% right. I fell in love with this movie. So it's an honorable mention because it's one of the movies that I could show my daughters and say, look, you know, when they tell you that anything is possible, that small victories come, you know, but through failure, through getting taunted, from being bullied. Yeah. And look, at the other end of it, if you trust in your instinct and believe in yourself, you can accomplish some form of small victories. Yeah. And Patty Cakes is a real testament to that. So it's a wonderful, wonderful film.
That's great. I would love to get around to it. I remember watching the trailer for it and going, that looks fucking hilarious. Good. It's good. I didn't hear a lot of conversation about it, so it's good somebody's fighting its corner.
No, it's a solid film. Moving on. I'm going to name 2 documentaries that I had a fun time watching. The first one was Nobody Speak: The Trials of the Free Press. And it had to do with the Hulk Hogan scandal, I think, where there was a sex tape involving the Hulk Hogan, the wrestler. And it's just weird because the whole documentary there turns into this people wanting to control what the hell is going on in the press. And it goes all the way, I think it was the Peter Thiel that has to do with I think it was eBay.
Yeah, it does. Surely it deals with Gawker Media as well. They got shut down in the wake of
that. There
you
go. That's it. That's the other part. Yeah. And so it's just a real interesting documentary to see that this isn't even about saving face. It's actually being able to manipulate what people are seeing in the news. You know, and trying to bury stories because like money's involved and they don't want to be doing this, and you're not allowed to publish this type of thing because it's supposed to be private information. And I think that if anybody wants to see, just like, especially in the climate that we're going on right now, the media has been part of the media for a very, very long time in 2017, ever since Trump got elected. And I mean, there are more and more stories that are going to be coming out that are going to be somewhat similar to Nobody Speak: The Trials of the Free Press. So that would be the first documentary. The other one is Jim and Andy: The Great Beyond.
Oh yeah, I didn't get to see this, but I heard weird and good things about it.
To be honest, I'm still kind of perplexed by it because I'm not sure that Jim Carrey is not acting in this documentary. I don't know if he believes everything he's saying because it's a fascinating character study of how he became a method actor for this particular role in Man on the Moon, which came out, I think, in 1999. Yeah. And this was Jim Carrey. I mean, I think it was just post Truman Show where he decided, I'm going to become a real
actor's actor. Yeah.
I'm not going to keep doing I'm not going to keep doing Ace Ventura or The Mask or anything like that. But he was huge. This is the Jim Carrey period, you know, right after like the 1994 Dumb and Dumber Mask and all that stuff. And so this is him trying to kind of, you know, change his career path and become like, I want to be taken seriously. And he did a great job in Man on the Moon. But then after that, when you start realizing just the amount of, you know, you think Jared Leto was an asshole in Suicide Squad, then you probably should watch Jim and Andy because you'd probably be like, Jim Carrey was a bit of a dick too.
No shit.
During the shooting of that. Was it normal for him to do that type of thing? And even hearing his explanations of it, you can't help but feel weirded out by the level of commitment someone will put into developing a character they have to portray. It goes to the point where you're like, where does the line go between make-believe? You know, where's the acting line and becoming something else?
That's when does art, you know, what qualifies the level of input for art, and what qualifies just being a nuisance.
Well, that's the other thing. But I mean, Milos Forman did a great job in directing that. And I mean, to me, if anybody fancies themselves somewhat of a director, give yourselves the pleasure of watching The Great Beyond, Jim and Andy, because this will help you handle cases of people becoming insane on a film set. Because had Foreman decided, you know, hey, stop fucking around, you know, had he gone Hitchcock on him and say, hey, I'm not putting up with your bullshit, that production would have been way worse than it actually turned out to be. So Foreman gave into it, and he was able to, it's a master class in directing someone who's very difficult to work with. And I thought that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, the only documentary I seen this year, I Am Not Your Negro. It was the adaptation of the memoirs of James Baldwin. I won't say too much about it, because all I'll say about it really is that it's kind of my 13th for 2017. I think it's another perfect look at how fucked up and how fucked over the black community in America have had to, how much they've had to endure. And James Baldwin is a fascinating insight into that entire landscape. He's right there with the three big names of the civil rights movement. He really does add both like a bitterness and an anger, but also he's very eloquent in how he produces his thoughts on the entire climate at the time. Fascinating. Another great, if 13th is now, I Am Not Your Negro was then, and so they kind of make a perfect little combination.
Nice.
So again, fascinating, absolutely worth watching. And that's all I'll say. You'll gain a lot more from watching it than some white guy telling you how to feel about it.
Let's see, another one of my honorable mentions. This is one that was going to be part of my top 10. And it's dropped out of my top 10. And the reason for that is I didn't really feel the need to revisit it. And I'm talking about A Ghost Story. It's one of the best films to come out this year, in the experimental nature of it. Just like the bare bones story, the visual storytelling is absolutely off the charts. And not only that, Ghost Story was part of the whole experience for us at AtlanticSC, actually making it to our first film festival. So the Fantasia Film Festival, which was absolutely wonderful. And so, I mean, my viewing of the film at that point, I was really high on it because of the experience that I'd had, not only watching the film, but the experience that I had in just kind of around the film as well. Absolutely. So it kind of gave it a heightened reality. Now, given the time that I've had to take, you know, to think about it and bring it down. Exactly. Now, if I take the film for what it is, it's an excellent film, but it's not one that I can kind of tell people to watch because it's really going to be one of those divisive movies. Although I really, really, really enjoy it, and I think it's one of the best films to come out this year, I don't really feel the need to rewatch it. I've seen it twice, and I'm like, it's really good. Is it top 10 material for me? Not really. I think that I'll probably end up rewatching it a couple more times, and it'll be one of those interesting movies that I'd love to teach. You know, when you're talking about narrative, when you're talking, you know, teaching film to students, you can actually use this, like you're talking about visual storytelling. That's what movies is. And I think A Ghost Story is one of those prime examples of what visual storytelling is actually about. But it still is a very complicated art piece that I can't recommend.
Put your full weight behind.
I have to know what your sensibility. Exactly.
Absolutely. No, I'm on the exact same page. It's here in my honorable mentions. Didn't make the top 10 list, despite, you know, at the time of Big Picture Reviews, I give it an A+ on the show.
So did I. It's still there.
Exactly. And the show, we talked about a lot about how it connects emotionally, about universal grief was something I was talking about, and I still believe that's it's a great film for analyzing that kind of thing. I still think as an artwork, it's very interpretive, but also very universally applicable. I think everybody can get more or less something out of it, even if you don't love it as a whole. But I'm the same. I think it's technically a perfect film, but because it relies so much. And this is maybe it's undoing, or maybe it's just how it will appeal more to others than it does to me. Is that it is so based on an emotional experience. And an emotional experience, well, for one, hardly can ever be recaptured. So that will be something when it comes to reviewing. I don't think it will ever be hit again. But also, I think of that emotional experience, a lot of that top 10 films, I got more of an emotional experience out of. And I think when it comes to universal grief, a lot of the stories I preferred were stories that were more about like universal love in comparison, you know, something far more positive.
Right.
And I think grief is important to tell in stories. I think that, I mean, everybody goes through it, and preemptive grieving as well, something I went into. I think everybody goes into that, and nobody really talks about the fact we do it. I think A Ghost Story is a perfect example of looking into that kind of experience. And I think I absolutely, without a doubt, recommend it to people. But when I look back on 10 films that matter to me personally, it doesn't just quite make the cut. So I'm exactly in the same boat as you are.
Cool.
Another film I've seen this year was Detroit. It's an honorable mention. A Catherine Bigelow film. It's weird. It didn't make the top list, even though it was incredibly affecting. Like, I sat mouth agape watching the film. It's a miserable, horrible experience. It's the quietest horror film of the year, and I hated it because it was so deeply unsettling and cruel, and the whole time I just wanted it to be over. But that was the point. It's entirely that story. It's a horrible point in time. It's a horrible experience to watch it. It just makes you angry, and that's what it should do. It made me fucking angry.
Right.
These poor people are getting shit upon by the fucking police again, of course, and it just goes on. It just seems like there's so many ways for it to diffuse, and then it just goes up another level, and the fact this all really happened, it's awful. It's an awful experience, and Detroit encapsulates it so well. It would be remiss of anyone to exclude it just because it's uncomfortable,
right?
Or to not recommend it. I do recommend it. I do think it's a hard one to watch. To me, I can't kind of shake it off, you know, and that's why, you know, I feel like it has to get a mention at some point, even though I don't like look back on the 10 of this year so fondly and go like, Detroit's up there. I remember being broken down, you know, like it's not the case. Not joyous like that, but it's absolutely a recommendation. It's a wonderful film. It's just prepare yourself. It's also not a fun watch by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get to it. The reason why I haven't seen it yet is because my vision of the whole movie production wise has been kind of skewed because of a teacher I have, or had, I should say. When I was in university, I took an African American literature course. That's right. You know, it was a survey of a lot of African American literature, and the teacher in question is a guy who studies that, and I became his research assistant, and I've been kind of close to this material for quite some time, and so I have trouble making up my mind because I feel sometimes that this individual, as much as I love him, will make you feel guilty for liking something because it's improperly made.
Yeah, I get you.
And so Detroit, we were supposed to possibly have him on the show to come discuss that, and he hadn't seen the movie yet and was already dismissive of it because of the fact that this was made by white people, and there was white people telling an African American story or a black story from that period in time. And I can understand the issue there, but I haven't really made up my mind as to how I'm going to feel about it. So what I wanted to do is kind of give myself that distance so that voice in my head just kind of goes down and I can go in and watch it, because the discourse that came out of it was like, white people are paying to see black people be brutalized again. And I was isn't that just a one-sided way of seeing it?
To analyze it that way. I think it's a frightening insight to the damage white people do to black people. I don't think it's fetishizing black violence, you know?
Well, that was his point on it, and he hadn't seen the movie yet. And the discourse that he'd got, speaking with a lot of individuals that had seen the movie at that point, that it came off as something like that.
It's a little difficult as well, in that it does portray the mindset of the white people. It's not trying to apologize on their behalf. It's just telling you this is how they got to where they were. And I'm sure a lot of people do read that as it's saying the white people had their reasons, you know? But those reasons are insane, you know, they're madness. And to pretend that they actually reflect sense or empathy in any sense is to go insane yourself. So, I mean, how anybody could think this was a film, I understand the questionability about white people telling the story, but it's less about empathy for the black people involved. And I get where a black voice would have done that part maybe better. This was more about taking down the white people involved and showing how fucking disastrous and monstrous their side of the story is and how fucked up their mindset was. And I think there's a relevant side to that conversation as well, because that has to change, and that's why the white people who are going to see this film have to watch this fucking film and go, oh, so that's how they made up their minds to do this, and I think that is an important narrative to tell. I don't think it's more important, or that it's even comparable, really, to the empathy required.
But that's why I have trouble a little bit with what is being said, because the teacher I have is white, and so to me, there's an inherent irony there where I'm like, well, aren't you teaching me African American history? Kind of doing the same thing.
I get
Should
that. Yeah.
What's the validity that you have as an individual who's teaching me this shit? If I'm going to get someone to teach it, should I actually be taught by a person not only who has lived that, but is also of the race involved?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like torn right now with that weirdness where I'm like, I really want to see the picture because I like Bigelow. But at the same time, I'm like, man, what do I do? Am I supposed to be outraged that it's white people that have made this movie?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I won't sugarcoat it. It's a complicated affair, obviously. It's a complicated story to tell. It's complicated in how it got made. It's complicated who made it. And what I'm trying to say is complicated in itself. But I think I walked away from it thinking I got the intended nature of the narrative, and I lining that up with how we would want humanity to change in the future. I would see that as the intended outcome, and I think other people will see it that way too. So I think that's as base as I can make it. That's why I would recommend Detroit, because it does more good than bad in any extent of the imagination.
That's where my problem lies at the same time, because, I mean, obviously, we're both white.
Yeah.
And so, because there's white people communicating this message, we'll get that message.
Yeah.
However, is it the message that someone who is African American descent would have been, like, just saying, this is the way I would have told the story?
Yeah.
What I would have loved to see is, what a black audience thinks.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would give us a little bit more insight. So, but anyway, it's something I want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Something on the lighter side. I had 3 comedies lined up that I'll talk about in terms of honorable mentions, and the 3 are Baby Driver, Colossal, and The Big Sick.
Cool.
3 movies that I had a really fun time watching. Colossal and The Big Sick are movies that I watched at home. I didn't watch them in the movie theater. And Baby Driver I saw on vacation during the summer. Baby Driver, we have an episode on it. If you guys want to know what we thought about it, go straight to that.
I'll chime in here and say it's an honorable mention for me. It was a fun episode to talk about because it's not exactly a critical kind of film. It's very much it's an enjoyable popcorn film. It's a well-made popcorn film, and that was fun to talk about. But it's an honorable mention. It doesn't make the top 10. It's not as succinct. You don't get as much, but I will be watching it again and again, that kind of thing. But yeah, the other 2 I haven't actually seen, so I am interested in seeing your thoughts on it.
Oh, Colossal. I mean, it was one of those movies that I'd heard kind of good, goofy things from. They were like, what the hell is this concept? And to be honest, I dig the concept and the story just as much. I actually hesitated about including this in my top 10 of the year, but I didn't. I figured, you know what? This is probably a movie I'm going to enjoy rewatching to kind of pick apart just a little bit. But at the same time, I got the message the first time around. So it's not something that exactly pays off over and over again. Yeah. Same thing for Baby Driver with me, where I'm like, this is fun, but I don't need to rewatch it. I don't need to pick it apart anymore or anything like that. And the same with The Big Sick. The Big Sick is really good in terms of, relationships and different cultures kind of clashing and whatnot. And I thought it was a really good, fun comedy. We needed something like that. And so all of these movies have a very good message at the heart of them. They're a really good time. And if ever you guys have some time to kill, please get to them.
No, totally agreed on Baby Driver. And we'll get around to the other 2. I'll go for 2 films, honorable mentions that I don't think you've seen. Because I'll say I don't want to step on too many toes too early on. One of them is Raw. The French horror film.
No,
I knew you wouldn't watch that one yet, because it's you need to you have to rally your efforts when it comes to horror. And I'd say this one, it's interesting because it's more gross than it is scary. Actually, it's not scary at all.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's a film that really got across how gross and uncomfortable our own sexuality is. And while also daring to parallel that with how miserable and daunting our siblings or inspirers or peers can be while we're dealing with that sexuality. It's messy and it's horrible. It's a very uncomfortable watch, and it's fantastic. Like it is. It's really, really, really good. It's easily one of the most bizarre, affecting films I've seen. The images stick in your head.
Right.
The other one,
far
more palatable, but weird in its own way, is Oksha. That was on Netflix. The Super Pig movie. Yeah, I didn't think you'd seen that one either. Oksha is a messy fucking film. But as if you've listened to our Last Jedi conversation, messy is good by me. I have so many fond memories of this film. I think of Paul Dano finally finding the perfect role for him as a baby-faced, anime-style badass, grassroots freedom fighter. I think is beyond perfect. How he hasn't been portraying like anime-styled characters in his history and film so far is beyond me, because he is so good in this film.
Okay.
Jake Gyllenhaal as well has probably my favorite quote of all film this year, because I use it so often. It's you can't fake these emotions. And he's this greasy, creepy nature documentary guy. Okay. And each time I now see these nature documentaries or these geographical documentaries on TV, and this guy, you could see where the cuts are in the film where these guys could potentially be assholes off screen, and how they put on their TV face for a bit to give some meaningful speech. And I can't get this character out of my head. And I'm like, oh my god,
that's great.
It's so perfect. Again, all the other characters in it are fantastic. I loved Miju, the little girl. I loved her cynical asshole grandfather. I will say I wasn't super sold on the emotional aspect of the story, so I'll say that.
Okay.
But I don't think you have to be to enjoy it. I think it's a gorgeous made film. I think it's full of like super memorable action sequences, like a parade and a motorcycle chase to catch up with a moving van. I think there's so many cool moments in it that it doesn't really matter what it's really trying to say, as long as it ultimately means well, and it does mean well. But there's so many fun, quirky characters here, and whether it's worth your time to actually make something of it, I don't know. I just enjoyed the ride, and I think it's fine to enjoy the ride sometimes. So I think Oksha is just one of those honorable mention, because it stuck with me the entire year, and I absolutely loved it. I would love to watch it again just to steal characters from it.
I'm gonna go with Lucky.
Lucky, yeah. I didn't see this.
Lucky, with Harry Dean Stanton in his last performance. It's just a heartwarming tale about getting old. You know, finding connection and whatnot. And I really had a great time. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. Do yourselves a favor and watch Lucky. I mean, coming to terms with what you've done in your life, where you're headed, what do you make of the time that's left? I think was a very, very touching story. And as a last performance, obviously, Harry Dean Stanton, it was just fucking awesome to see him like just be great one last time.
Yeah, right.
And so if ever you guys get a chance to do that, watch Lucky. It is a very, very beautiful film. Not even I wouldn't even say a coming of age. It would actually be a coming to terms
cool
film. And I think that's really great. Yeah. You know, it very seldom do we see old age portrayed in that way, and I think that Stanton does a great job.
Well, here's a more divisive one, especially for me, but I feel like I would be remiss to leave it off honorable mentions because I'm still thinking about it, and that is Martin Scorsese's Silence.
Oh, that's a last year movie for us. Yeah,
well, yeah, it came out January 1st here, so it was literally on the ball. It's interesting. We talked about maybe doing the film for an episode at one point.
Yeah,
I did not want to do it. Because I still feel I'm very jaded about it, right? It's a super unfair movie because it's got so much narrative bias, and that bothers me a lot. It kind of skews the argument in favor of its protagonist suffering, which ultimately makes its antagonist seem inhuman and unstoppable, which is I feel is unfair. When I was watching it, I was just like, these people cannot be this cruel. There could be cruel actions, but the way that they're tormenting this one guy over all of them It feels almost like a self-insert. It also cheats at the end, I think. It kind of robs us of a human story for an inhuman story.
Okay.
It favors what could be an actual cutoff point in human understanding, and then greets us this great moment with Liam Neeson. It's the most human thing. This beautiful conversation about knowing where to draw the line, you know?
That conversation to me was the most Star Wars
It
conversation
really is, yeah.
about a certain point of view. That is not in a Star Wars
But
movie.
it was...
I don't want to be insulting, but it felt like that.
It felt like to me, like the perfect takeaway from the film was right in that conversation, that dialogue. If the film had ended there, I would have been like, holy shit. They show how opinions clash, how people can get messed up in what they're trying to do, and how sometimes you just kind of lose. You know, you kind of, sometimes the powers that be are weighted against you, and you come to terms with that, and you can come to terms with that, and Liam Neeson shows you can come to terms with that, and I think that's gorgeous, and I think that had Andrew Garfield's character taken a little bit more of that on board, we would have been left with a story that was far less divisive, far more relatable than what ultimately happens, which is he kind of falls back in the old habits, or secretly stows away his Christianity because fuck humanity. Faith never dies, even though we've been shown a character where faith dies, faith never dies. And like, I don't agree. I think that's wishful thinking. And I get that, though. To be fair, I can't help but think it's an incredible insight into the mind of the devout, just in the way that the film is framed and the story is told and how it ends. That gives me more an insight to, like, the people who made it and the man who wrote it and the man who directed it, you know, that kind of, there's that desperation to paint pictures that way, to equate religion as a challenge and faith as a battle you can cheat at, you know, that's fascinating, right, yeah. Because it's not how I think. And I can't dismiss it because it is someone's take, you know, and so in that being and how it is, and I don't agree that it to me it misses what was the real heart of the story to tell a different story, which is fine, but I can't help but admire how beautiful and well told this weird other take of the story was.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with regards to Silence. I think it's a very carefully crafted film. It's a beautiful film. The performances are absolutely marvelous. It does give you insight into how Scorsese feels about faith in general. And I agree with you that there is a cop-out at the end where you're like, come on, man. You didn't have to... I feel like you're at a poker table, all right, and then you finally realize someone's got a cheat card up its sleeve.
Yeah.
Up his sleeve, where you're like, oh, come on. You're not allowed to play that card.
Exactly.
Let the audience decide, you know, let the audience make up their mind. Do they agree with Liam Neeson? Because by playing what he did at the end, by showing that cross in the hand and it's glowing and all that shit, it kind of robs us a little bit of what Neeson's saying. And it kind of also gets us to question, is Liam Neeson's character actually lying?
Yeah. He could be doing the same thing, you know, and I do think it is seeing the universality of faith as applicable to all people in their private moments, which I think is untrue. and it's heavily biased to me, but again, like I said, it does give us an insight into the people who are thinking like that. So I mean, it's true to them.
But I feel like the overall message sometimes is, when I got to the end of it, and because I watched it twice, and I felt like at the end I felt like he was saying it's okay to be pig-headed.
Yeah, well, that is kind of true, you know. But again, it's something that's not how I see the world, you know. That's not how I want people to walk away from a film going, oh yeah, you know what? I could be an arrogant asshole and think whatever I think, and it's all me. As if it doesn't affect people, which isn't true. It always affects people. That's the thing.
Kinda, yeah.
You can't really keep something private and also be in society and think it doesn't have any bearing on how you relate to other people. So I think that doubling down on that is a negative message, and I don't want to promote films that without an asterisk that I think are going to give people the wrong impression. And I think Silence is one of those films, but at the same time, like, now that I've given you my asterisks, I do want to say that if you can bear that in mind, go have at it, see what you make of it. But that's what I got from it, and it's a bit weird. But you know, it's a film I do want to watch again, and that's the weird thing about it. It's a gorgeous film. It's a weird, good place to be.
Really good.
You know, it's a really well made film that I just don't agree with.
Hey, that's a great way to see it, actually. All right, I'm going to knock 4 out right now because I want to move on to the top. And I'm going to start this knocking out of the 4 with Spider-Man Homecoming as an honorable mention because I had a great time watching this movie. My kids love this movie. I think, to me anyway, it's the best superhero movie to come out in 2017, right after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which is also an honorable mention that I forgot to add that I'm doing now.
I did not either of those, although I really did enjoy them, and I disagree on the superhero thing, but that's fine.
What do you mean you disagree on the superhero thing?
I'll tell you later.
Oh, okay. But so I really think that these are two really fun movies. I think that they finally got Spider-Man right. This is a Spider-Man that's for this generation. Finally, I think that this is a very it's a very good film. I'll leave it at that. Fuck it. And so the same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I still hold that one in high regard. I've watched it recently and I really love it. Yeah, I think they did a great job in developing those characters, and it's a contained story as well. It doesn't need to be launched into any other thing. It has to do with them. So you don't necessarily have to plug into the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in order to enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I think that is a bonus for it. The other ones are going to be Alien Covenant, Blade Runner 2049, and War for the Planet of the Apes. Alien Covenant, I have nothing but love for the film, even if there are problems with the movie. I think it's a really solid film. I think it's Ridley Scott's fuck you to the Alien franchise as well. I think he's trying to develop something a little bit more meaningful than just that black giant xenomorph. And he's basically saying to people, here, I'll make the less interesting parts of the movie with the aliens so that you guys can leave me the fuck alone. And it was really great to see that, because that is not the most interesting part of the movie. The most interesting part is David and how crazy David is. And I'm looking forward to seeing where he can go with that. We had a great episode on it. It's one of our most listened to episodes as well on Alien Covenant.
It was really good times. Didn't make my list or honorable mentions, but I agree. You know, I do think the film it has a lot of merit. I think it's a great creator story, and just the many capacities that a creator can interpret their own work and other work, and how they have to deal with interpretation with that. It kind of ties into some of our other conversations this year. I think it's a great insight into Ridley Scott more than anything, and his battles with Alien.
And even in his most recent comments, what he was saying that he wants to come back to Blade Runner, which I completely disagree with.
Yeah, he really should not do that.
Go away. He's already trashing Villeneuve's film. And he's like, it's too long. I wouldn't have made it like that. And you're like, don't do that. Don't just kind of do something else, man. Go away.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as I love Ridley Scott, Blade Runner 2049 is a solid film by Denis Villeneuve. Yeah. I think it looks great. The story itself, I think it did need to be that length. You could have shaved off maybe 15 minutes, fine. But the one thing that I agree with and Villeneuve in terms of length was that he just let that, like a great bottle of wine, you let it breathe just a little bit. And I think that that's one of those movies. Blade Runner 2049 is gorgeous. I think the story is really interesting. There's a lot of subversion going on when we were talking about in our conversation, the idea of taking that story of the one and saying, fuck that. No way. Absolutely. You're not important. No, and I think that was great.
Blade Runner is also on my honorable mentions as well. Again, I love how it deals with the many forms of identity, gender, sexuality, heritage, that kind of thing. Things that influence our identity and how we come to terms with that. Societal is also one. And it kind of actually does tie out a bit with the individuation stuff we've been talking about lately in Star Wars, but still, same sort of idea. How we come to terms with these, how the individual exists in a world so big and so grand and so full of shit. And I think it's a lovely film. I think it honestly has its heart in its right place. And it's also a good thriller. I think it draws you along the whole way through it, so it doesn't feel anywhere near as long as it actually was.
You're absolutely right, yeah. And the last one was War for the Planet of the Apes. The first time I saw the film, I wasn't too interested in it because the title is very misleading. It isn't a war at all. It's actually a war for Caesar's soul, which is even more affecting the second time I watched it, because I remember coming home and telling my kids and telling Leslie that I didn't particularly enjoy this last installment in the Apes, the new Apes trilogy. And they were kind of like, they were bummed by that because Rise and Dawn are really solid. I wasn't expecting that at all. And when I bought the film on iTunes when it was cheap because they wanted to see it, and I sat down and I watched it with them, and I was like, well, Jesus Christ, look at that. I was wrong. This is really solid. This is a really, really good movie. And I think it was really well crafted. It's a good story to show that vengeance isn't necessarily the best option, because you're not only putting yourself in danger, you're putting everything you've worked for in danger and trying to maybe get a little bit of self-satisfaction in knowing that you were able to take care of something or get revenge on someone for doing something specifically to you. But at the same time, it's fun to see how Caesar goes from seeing the big picture to actually being only selfish and going back to seeing the big picture of what he's supposed to represent. And also having that double in Woody Harrelson, the putting him against someone who's somewhat like him, who's acting on selfishness, who thinks that he's doing something for the greater good, but not necessarily. He thinks he is, but it's a very perverted and corrupted version of that. You know, the fact that he's killed his own son and all that stuff. You're like, oh shit, this is all self-preservation so that he can stay alive. But what does it all mean in the end if you can't necessarily have anything to share it with? And if it's all based on basically killing a bunch of people, not necessarily the best thing either. And so I really think that War of the Planet of the Apes is a solid, I won't say ending to the franchise of the new Planet of the Apes movies, but this is easily one of the most solid trilogies that have come out in recent years. There is not a dull movie in these ones.
Absolutely.
It's very much par for the course. Bang, bang, bang. 3 home runs in a row. So, give yourselves a chance. If you guys want to do it, go ahead. This is one of those really interesting character arcs with Caesar, and War of the Planet of the Apes really puts a nice cap into the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It did make honorable mentions. I totally agree. There's not a bad film in that trilogy. It's fantastic. And it's even funny. Like, I thought the war title, you got, like personal war. And, and like for me, it was more like, because the film plays on so many homage elements to cinema, I thought that war was kind of like the old war film homage, because it's basically a prison break. And that's kind of reminds me like The Great Escape and films like that, you know, like these old war films that are more about the people in the war than the big battles themselves. It's kind of like how Star Wars works. There's very little actual war in Star Wars. Kind of similar idea. Yeah. I thought it was a cute little homage to that. I think that the story told is really good. It's a bit messy, and I like that as well. It plays with narrative structure in a lot of fun ways. I think it's just a really good film. Absolutely agree that it recommended. Yeah, rounding out honorable mentions, I'll save one because at this point I know it's in your top 10 if you haven't mentioned it. So
cool.
The other ones that I'm less sure about. Super Dark Times
nice.
is a film that on pondering, I enjoyed the film itself, even if I was always iffy about the ending. What it means most to me is that I loved our experience of breaking it down on the fly. I think I have such fond memories of just like, what were we planning to say? And then what we ended up saying was just the fact that we had both seen something that affected us somewhere deep, and yet we had no real way to express it until we started bombarding each other with crap on different things, until we started carving an actual image of what this film was. And I associate that experience, and I think that people will get a similar experience as well discussing this film. And it enhances Super Dark Times so much because it is rich like that. It's got some of the greatest characters in films this year. So relatable, so enjoyable. And the story is good. Very weird, interpretive, iffy story full of dreams and weirdness. And I think a lot of people will hate that, and a lot of people will connect to it. And it's worth the plunge just to see, but see it with a friend and see what the fuck they make of it. Because that's how it worked out for me. And so, there's that.
Did not make my honorable mention.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I'd say another honorable mention is, and I'm not sure if it's on your top 10 or not, but it's Split.
Hey, pardon me, sir. I think you have the wrong car.
What are we doing here? What the hell is going on?
I was sent to get you for a reason.
Open the door! No! There's a flower on the pillows, a flower in the bathroom. Like, we're important.
The only chance we have is if all 3 of us go crazy on this guy.
Who is that? Maybe she can help us.
We're here! Help us!
We're in here!
Don't worry. He's not allowed to touch you. He knows what you're here for. He listens to me.
My name's Hedwig.
How old are you?
9?
I've never seen a case like this before. 23 identities live in Kevin's body. Who are you?
Help me get out of here, Hedwig.
You trying to trick me? I'll tell on you. Aren't you the clever one?
An individual with multiple personalities can change their body chemistry with their thoughts.
Someone's coming for you.
Who's coming?
The beast.
There's a man here. He abducted us and he's going to kill me. We're meant for something. Something horrible.
The world will understand now. The beast is real. He's done awful things to people, and he'll do awful things to you.
Completely forgot about that one.
Forgot about Split.
I forgot about
Shame,
Split.
oh shame. I fucking loved Split. It's one of those ones that I was actually like, because I enjoyed it so much, I argued whether it was in the top 10. I don't think it's a perfect film. Let's be serious. I think it's
fun though. It's good.
It's just very fun. We were spoiled for brilliant horror this year. I think this is, in review, the lesser of at least two big horror films. And in that shadow, it kind of gets forgotten a lot. But, what can you do? I loved it. But I love talking about the film. I think it was a really fucking weird conversation we had about it. And I think a lot of people will absolutely enjoy Split. I think it's just a really fun film.
It's a really fun film. I completely forgot about it, though.
Yeah.
But I definitely should go on my honorable mentions as well.
Absolutely. And as far as honorable mentions goes, that's me. There are two other ones that I know you're going to be talking about anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Cool.
I'll let you bring them up.
My last honorable mention is a TV series called Mindhunter. Go watch it. Made for Netflix. It's a David Fincher project, so it looks great. And I mean, it's just a procedural, but it's done with a really, really intense dread and terror throughout. You know, it's basically behavioral psychology, the development of that, interviewing serial killers. It's really, really fascinating. So that was my last honorable mention.
My name is Bill Tench. This is my partner, Holden Ford. We're from the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Behavioral Science Unit. We're doing research, interviewing men like you.
If you do go to Vacaville, you definitely need to meet Ed Kemper. They call him the co-ed killer.
Do you think the Kemper would talk to us? Try stopping him.
Shepard finds out you've been interviewing the co-ed killer, he'll flip his shit.
It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So you're just gonna say and do whatever you want. We decided no one was beneath our contempt.
And that snail didn't change your mind?
What happens to these men is normal, but the way that they process it is not.
I just decided to kill them.
It is not our job to commiserate with these people.
Hello, ladies.
It is our job to electrocute them.
I truly believe there is a vein here that needs to be mined.
If you don't like it, go back to your bedwetting college kids and we'll forget all about it.
Certainly our goal is to be preemptive.
We're the FBI, Holden. That is not our goal. Yet.
So yes, let's get into our top 10 films.
I'm more than surprised we haven't stepped on each other's toes in the top 10 categories up till now.
Yep.
So either we have all the same films or we have totally different fucking top 10s.
Oh no, you stepped on one of them, but I just didn't react to it.
Oh, okay, cool. Right. So you have two top 10s.
I don't have two top 10s. I have two in my number 10 spot.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
All right. So I'm going to start by saying that these are tied because I'm still processing both of these films. And I'm going to start by saying that the first one is The Post, directed by Steven Spielberg. When I watched the film, I was slightly bored by it. I thought it looked like it was shot fast and it felt like a play. And I mean, it's kind of annoying to me because you could tell where Spielberg was standing in the room at all times. However, the film hasn't really left my mind yet, and I've slowly started noticing the craft that Spielberg was actually trying to go for. Mm-hmm. It's like a 40s and 50s style, an aesthetic that reminded me a little bit of Ace in the Hole or Citizen Kane, the usage of deep focus, and all that. So to show like the how big the newsroom is and whatnot. And so I thought that was cool. And not only that, the over the top performances, Hanks is doing something that's kind of akin to a 1950s businessman,
Absolutely.
News guy a little bit.
It reminded me of Josh Brolin in Hail Caesar a little bit.
There you go. Absolutely. So good that you bring that up. That is exactly what you're talking. Perfect. And I mean, even like he's also, I mean, Spielberg is actually mixing in a 1970s shoulder cam style as well, like kind of documentary. Like, so by mixing all these things, he's kind of bringing it into today, you know?
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
it's like a kind of a mix of so many different things, which is great. So at first, when I was watching the film, I found it kitschy. I was like, meh, Spielberg can do a little bit better than this. But then I'm coming around to thinking that this is actually really a solid Spielberg film, that is using so many different tricks of the trade from past generations to show that we're actually in the same place we were, you know, maybe 50 years ago, 30 years ago and whatnot, with regards to how the press is being taken down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how we have to be careful about that because we need to get that news out there. And so that would be for me for The Post. It's one that I'm going to rewatch. And I think that on subsequent viewings, this might actually go up the list a little bit because it's solid.
Yeah,
it's a really,
I agree.
Really solid
I got the chance to see it as well. I really dug it. I wouldn't say it was top 10. I would begrudgingly maybe give it an honorable mention, but it just depends how it strikes you. I love what you're saying about it, so I mean that at least there's a conversation to be had. But for me, it never really struck like a core other than just plain enjoyment. So yeah,
there you go. And the second film that's at my 10 spot on the list, I know I'm not supposed to be naming numbers, but it's anyway, they're there.
Yeah.
It's Call Me by Your Name. It's an excellent film, although I have to say, as I was watching it, I didn't feel anything. I was kind of like, all right, fine, you know, but the conversations I've had with people about the film have made it interesting.
More fascinating.
To me. It's one of those movies. I know what it's about. I'm watching it, and I mean, it's a fascinating. I mean, how can I put it?
Yeah, to me, it's I describe it as a postcard movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, that's a great way to put it. You know, and I bet even the romance story is very relatable.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the fact that the director was able to make this like to show that there's patience involved, that there's awkwardness involved, and that you're trying to read the other individual to see if there's actually interest there or not. And I mean, some people have talked about it as a coming out story, and I kind of disagree with that. I think that it's a label that's way too charged for what's actually on display. And I wouldn't want people to say that the reason they don't watch the movie is because they've never really had to come out, so it's not something that's going to appeal to them.
That's true, yeah.
I'd rather say to them, you've fallen in love at some point in your life, or you've desired someone or something immensely. And that's why this is a film for you.
Absolutely.
This is a universal love story. It just happens to be between two guys. And it doesn't really matter. I think that that's even a bigger message, is that you'll find these things in pretty much any relationship you have, whether if it's a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual relationship. You know,
as I describe
whatever.
it, to me, it was the 3 bisexual relationships in this film. So I mean,
there you go.
It's not open and interpretive to where people fall, but that's also to show how little it matters where they fall. You know, it's more about the actual
that's
people involved and how they felt.
And that's what I thought was great, is that this felt like real people. And that's what I loved about the story, is because that's why I find it's relatable. Even though I've had no homosexual experience, I've felt exactly what those guys are feeling for each other with the relationships I've been in with women.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I understand it. So that's why I think it's even more powerful than saying it's a coming out story or a coming of age story. Yes, 100%, but a coming out story, I'm a little bit on the fence with that, because it takes something away from my experience, because I feel attached to these guys no matter what. I think that this is a beautiful story that needs to be told, and you shouldn't label it that much. Now, I understand that that's a little bit of a touchy thing, and that's why I want to have more conversations with people, you know, that have been through a similar situation that I can't speak of, you know, so that they can enlighten me and so that I can understand a little bit more of why it should be labeled as such.
I totally understand how important this film is to the LGBTQ community, just because it absolutely plays down the drama involved.
Right. Okay.
Being
makes sense.
Not straight, you know, not hetero. Instead, just tells a story. You know, just tells these characters without all the middle context drama. Because to them and to most people, it just shouldn't be such a big deal. And this film knows that, and it doesn't make it a big deal. And in fact, it makes it a little bit of an influence in the back of a mind of a character, but it's all done internally. And it's only near the end of the film does it really approach anything close to trying to pin down what it's actually trying to talk about.
Right.
And that's why it's kind of only because of that is why it's sort of like a honorable mention, not my top 10, is because that preachiness did it took away from something of the free-flowing, beautiful nature of the film, where it was all experiential. I think it was a bigger statement than before the father character comes out. And I think a lot of people will connect to that speech, and that's important for them. I'm not gonna, I mean, that some people just need to be told that, you know, and that's fine. I think if you love the film and the speech involved, fine. I think that the speech maybe pins too much down when the rest of the film is so open and so free.
Right, okay.
And that's why, to me, it kind of lost a few points. That, and like you, I also didn't personally super feel anything. I related to it, absolutely, because who hasn't, wanted something that bad, but...
exactly, that's what's cool
But
about
I didn't
that.
feel like, I know myself that I've been through it, so I know that I don't have to think about it. But that doesn't mean that I can't say it's a beautiful film, or a film that I can see exactly why people are relating to it, because it hits the nose on a lot of feelings that people might just not be able to bring forward without an example of how it works in the world. And Call Me By Your Name is one of those potential examples that people can say, the way I'm feeling is like how this film shows how I'm feeling.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
That's something that is hard to find, and it's very personal to the person who watches it. And I think it's a very, kind of like a ghost story, very personal, emotional film. So I think that a lot of people will get charged reactions from it here and there, just based on how it relates to them. So that's why, to me, it's an honorable mention, because I admire that anybody can make a film like that. I know I certainly could never make a film like that.
How do you write a film
I have
like
no
that,
idea,
man?
So
it's really impressive.
Mind is blown by the craft involved. But at the same time, the point of it is very charged on whether you are emotionally connected to it or relate to it in such a way that it moves you to somewhere. And it didn't do that for me. And so that's why I can't give it the credit. There were 10 films that did that more for me. So that's why I didn't get there. But at the same time...
that's why I'm including the conversation.
Yeah, but exactly.
My
the conversation
the
is fascinating. And I think it's such a positive one that people should all be taking part in. Be very open to people getting it wrong. And also getting it more right than others, and just be aware that have empathy for the people you're talking to, because everybody gets something different from it. Just try to meet each other in the middle. But it's a great film. The conversation's super fun. Everything we've been a part of so far as well. I've just had a great time talking about it. I think it's a great film.
Yeah.
So for my number 10, it's going to be a film. It's kind of similar to Call Me By Your Name in that it focuses around a homosexual relationship. It's a film called God's Own Country. And it's a film no one is talking about. I don't think anybody saw, which is a shame, because it's beautiful. It's a fucking gorgeous, gorgeous film. For the premise, for those who don't know, it is about a boy who lives with his parents, and his parents run a farm, and his dad is slowly coming that age where he might be maybe passing away someday soon. And it's maybe time that the son kind of ups his duties and takes on more responsibility dealing with how he comes into his own on the farm. And his first decision is to bring a farmhand on. He's a Romanian man, and he helps around at the farm. He's actually brilliant at the farm work. And the two develop a very uneasy working relationship / sexual relationship. And it's a fascinating, I mean, it's easily my favorite relationship of 2017. The film shows that sort of messy intersection of desire and duty like none other that I've seen. It too, like Call Me By Your Name, removes the drama of the context of the day. It also doesn't do the whole playing up the fact, oh my god, they're gay. It's all background to the relationship that develops between these two people who one needs the other and one loves the other. And it's so good. And it's just one of those films that is incredibly relevant, again, like Call Me By Your Name, in how it relates to how people desire others. It hits on the same notes in relationships, but it's one that really moved me more. I don't know, maybe it's the physical nature of the relationship. It's very aggressive. Maybe it's the camaraderie about the position that they're in. And it's not sort of like an ideal holiday scenario where nothing matters and you have the time to explore yourself. There's a pressure on it. And in that pressure, he's trying to make too many things work, the main character. And how he kind of deals with that and crumbles with that and tries to make amends for his mistakes, which he makes constantly. is fascinating. And I just absolutely, if you haven't seen it, and I'm almost certain most people who are listening have not seen it, it is a beautiful film.
I haven't, yeah.
I think a lot more people should have seen it. But more than that, it's just how I felt about it at the time and still feel about it now. I think is well worth deserving of a spot somewhere in this unordered top 10. And just because it flowed with Call Me By Your Name, it came out first.
Good stuff. All right. So my number 9 is Good Time.
Good Time.
Directed by Benny and Josh Safdie, and it stars Robert Pattinson. And this movie is a fucking nightmare. It is bonkers from end to end. It is wonderful. It's about a bank heist gone wrong. It's 12 hours in the life of a guy who gets his mentally ill brother into trouble, but then tries to get him out of trouble.
Cool. By
trying to sell drugs and just it's just a mind fuck of a movie. And it was the same thing as when I had kind of a similar reaction when I was watching Call Me By Your Name. I was like, how do you write a film like this? How do you sit down and then just be like, yep, it's going to be like this, first act, second act, third act. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it's just one of those movies that it just keeps running and running and running. It is so fast paced, and it was brilliant. I watched this. It was December 31st. This was my last movie before kicking in the new year. I watched this and I watched Empire Strikes Back right after. But Good Time was one of the best ways to close out the year, and it shot up onto my top 10 of the year because it's just so great. The performances are absolutely wonderful in this movie, and I like the dilemma that I was left with, where I was thinking, does this guy actually love his brother, or does he just feel guilty for getting him into trouble? Because if he really loved him, why would he take advantage of him by bringing him to the bank heist in the first place, and then ultimately ditching him to save him, instead of saving him? I mean, and it's just really fucking cool. Yeah. You're watching this and you're like, this is what happens when you don't think things through and you're just acting on reflex. And it's great. It's a movie that I have to rewatch so that I can really look at what's being done, just from a movie making perspective. But as a story, I was just invested in this from beginning to end. I can't even tell you if I blinked. As what the fuck is going on? This is insane. And it was really, really great. It was a great time. So Good Time is a great time.
Cool. From very fast to very, very fucking slow. A film, and it's, I think, the last of the films that I think no one has seen, is a film called Song of Granite. It's an Irish film.
Okay.
It's a foreign language film. It's actually in Gaelic. I didn't know anything about it. It's even harder to explain it afterwards. It's actually a biography. Right, it's a biopic about a Irish. It's called Sean Moss singing. It's like folk singing, a traditional Irish singing. Guy was called Joe Heaney. Okay. And it's a biography of his life. But the fascinating thing is, I've never seen a film like it, and that's why I want to recommend it. It's going to be hard to justify because what I'm going to say next was that I fell asleep 4 or 5 times throughout the film.
Jesus, it's like my Year 7 Samurai.
Yeah. I just kept the fatigue washed over me. But that's kind of weird because it's kind of what the film was going for. It's actually told these are the points of a person's life that played the most influence on their life to then. So, a lot of the first half of the film is him being in this place in Galway, this Irish-speaking community, and he's a kid and he's growing up, and it's mostly tranquil and still, and nothing is happening. A couple of conversations here and there, but loads of just walking around, walking past lakes, just nothing. It's almost 45 minutes to an hour of nothing happening. Right. And the occasional kind of singing challenge, that kind of thing. And it jump cuts right, somewhere, I wouldn't say jump cut, but it kind of definitely fades very quickly to almost the end of his life, where he's gone through a folk career that traveled to New York and made himself a name of this band of folk Irish singers. And it's incredible. It's so weird. There's so much remorse and longing in this part of the film for the tranquil, boring part of the first film. It's like a dream, and a lot of it plays with the idea, the nature of poetry, how folk stories are related, how the actual meter and structure of poems, and how the questions they can ask, and how almost like the undecidability, that kind of thing. There's too much in the words to ever get across fully. I think I've never seen a film like it. It's gorgeous and it's boring as fuck, and it's also exciting by the end of it. The fact that it has any beat at all by the latter half almost feels like an adrenaline rush for the fact that the first half has nothing in it. So, Song of Granite, incredible film. Absolutely recommend. I have no idea how anybody will get a hand on it. There must be some iTunes somewhere that supplies it, but, yeah, I expect no one to like it. I just think it's one of those films like, how do you get to make this? And how does it turn out so well kind of films? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. So that's it's not number 9. It's just in there. It's in the mix.
All right. So I took a screenshot. Song of Granite, directed by Pat Collins.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to falling asleep to
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's unavoidable.
If it is exactly how you described it, then that's exactly what it's going to be. Very cool. All right. Moving up the list. Mine is number 8 is a made-for-Netflix documentary called Icarus.
I was thinking that we'd start, I ask you questions, and you answer yes or no. Were you the mastermind that cheated the Olympics?
Yes.
Today, the World Anti-Doping Agency suspended Russia's sports drug testing lab.
99% of Russian athletes are guilty of doping.
It's worse than we thought.
If this is true, it is an unimaginable level of criminality.
I was helping to facilitate one of the most elaborate doping ploys in sport history.
This goes all the way back to 1968. Every sport. Was Putin aware of the existence of a Russian doping system?
Yes. We are top-level cheaters.
This all can be proved. It's quite mind-blowing.
New York Times is breaking tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
That has the potential of affecting the credibility of all sport. Why would I watch an event that's fixed?
In any danger?
Yes. Oh, I need to escape. Putin will kill me.
Holy shit.
Putin calls the claims the slander of a turncoat.
2 people connected with the Russian doping program are already dead.
There never was anti-doping in Russia, ever.
Be very careful what was your recording.
Icarus is directed by Brian Fogel, and it's about this amateur cyclist who goes on the Supersize Me route, where he decides to test performance-enhancing drugs on himself and put himself into competition or amateur competitions for biking. So what he wanted to do is go into a competition with no drugs and to see how he performed. And then the year after that, train for it and use performance enhancing drugs in order to see how he would fare with the drug use. He does see his performance enhanced, but something goes wrong throughout that second one. So he doesn't place necessarily as well. But the interesting thing about the documentary is it takes a sharp right turn in the middle of the film where he gets in contact with a Russian doctor who's in charge of a laboratory. And this leads to him uncovering a huge drug scandal involving the Russian government and their manipulation of the anti-doping laboratory that enabled them to cheat during the Sochi Olympics.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think they mentioned it in the doc that this goes back, like the whole scandal goes back to the 70s. And this is with the doctor is Grigory Rodochenko.
Right.
And this is a huge wake-up call in terms of how people are not necessarily just invested in the sports, but invested in how to win medals in the most deceitful fucking ways. And this is one of the reasons I don't watch the Olympics, is because I'm like,
there's too much politics in the Olympics.
Doesn't make any sense. It just gets weirder and weirder. But the documentary itself, I mean, I was watching it because I like watching documentaries about this stuff. I like the idea behind the documentary where the dude is like, you know what, I'm going to go the supersize me route and I'm going to try the drugs on myself. And I was like,
concept.
What a great idea. You know,
absolutely.
so that'd be interesting. But then the surprise of where it heads, you know, this guy is now in the witness protection program in the United States. The Russian government are watching his family in Russia. He hasn't been in contact with them. It is just a mind fuck of a movie where you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this at all. I thought I was just going to chill in the afternoon. It's one of those documentaries that I put on and then I have a nap eventually through it. Couldn't fall asleep. I was just like, what the hell? This is absolutely fascinating. So if you guys like watching a really good, informative documentary, you know, go ahead and watch Icarus by Brian Fogel. It is a fascinating breakdown of what the fuck has gone down with how people use drugs in the Olympics, how corrupt everything around it is. And it goes up to the highest echelons of the government that are saying, all right, we're going to be in charge of the laboratory. This is the means we're going to do to change the piss, you know, the piss tests and all that so that you can have you know, it's just, it was just a mind-blowing experience to watch this unfold and be like, holy fuck, this guy just wanted to try something small on himself and it turned into a goddamn conspiracy. It is fantastic.
God.
So Icarus,
cool.
Get to that, people. Fucking cool.
Yeah, awesome. Right, this one probably some people will have seen, some will not. It's called The Red Turtle.
Oh, I heard about it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a film. It's a collaboration between Studio Ghibli and Wild Bunch, a French studio. What I loved about the film is how hugely interpretive it is. If you don't know the story, it's essentially a guy gets marooned on an island. And at the very start of the film, in his rage, trying to get off the fucking island, he kills a red turtle. And then the story just takes a fucking weird turn from there. It's very, very weird.
Okay. Wow.
So, because it's so interpretive, it's going to lose half its audience. It more than any film, it probably depicts the defeat inherent in life better than any other film I've seen this year. It's like choosing and forgetting our battles.
Right.
And attempting to conquer the chaos of everyday experience and our own rage. That all plays heavily into the experience this person has as they go about their day on this island and the weird events that start to take fold, and also the non-weird events. How there's also just a rhythm that kicks in that you just go through day to day, and it's very relaxed, and it's a very relaxing film. But there's a lot of deeply unsettling notions about it that you have to challenge yourself about, and the discussion, it would be fascinating. It is one of those films that says a lot of things and means a lot of things to lots of people, and also will mean nothing to anybody when it's so boring. It's that boring dialogueless film where the guy gets stuck on an island and an hour and a half later it ends. You know, like it is kind of like that. See it for yourself. I absolutely loved it. I walked out of it thinking, God, that's a gorgeous film. And one that definitely deserves to be talked about. Yeah, and it's just there. It's on the list.
All right. Next on my list, number 7 is Super Dark Times.
Super Dark Times.
Yeah, made my top 10.
Man,
directed by Kevin Phillips, co-written by Ben Collins and Luke Pachowski. And obviously this one is a mix of so many things. Not only did I enjoy the movie a lot, because I remember when we actually went in to talk about it, I had just finished watching the film 30 minutes prior to us actually talking about it.
Absolutely starting the conversation, absolutely.
And so my brain was buzzing. And I've watched it since, and it's still fantastic. I love this. It's Stranger Things with an edge, without the aliens in it, but at the same time, it plays on that type of nostalgia that I really enjoy. But then there's a big fucking twist of how friendship can be torn apart just because, I don't know, someone is just a little bit too intense to be in that group. And I like that, you know, like the whole rivalry that there is between guys and what can tear relationships apart. I also love the fact that we were able to talk about it. Again, this is tainted by the fact that we got to see this movie because of the Fantasia Film Festival. Not only that, we were lucky enough to build relationships with Ben Collins and Luke Pachowski on just talking to them off Twitter and all that. They're going to be coming on the show eventually. Just getting to talk to Elizabeth Cappuccino and Max Talisman that were kind enough to give us their time. Super Dark Times is just too much of a beautiful gift to what we've been doing in terms of the podcast for me to leave off my top 10.
Absolutely.
Not only is it a solid film, but it is a positive experience for me, and that's why it's one of my favorite watches of the year. I mean, just the film craft. I had never seen anything directed by Kevin Phillips. I think this is his first feature film. And just to show that much confidence in directing
Yeah,
on a first feature is absolutely fantastic. So Super Dark Times is on my list because it deserves to be. It's part of my top 10. I want to encourage everyone to see that movie as quickly as you can. Go ahead and watch it. It's fucking cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next two I'll talk about, but I'll talk about one now and then talk about one later. They're both Oscar runners for last year. So
Okay.
I don't think a lot of people, I doubt they're on your list just because of the way they fell. But to me, they're 2017 movies. So that's why I'll be talking about them now. I would feel remiss leaving them off because even a year later, when all these new Oscar films are coming out, I still love these films. And I'll talk about what I would consider maybe the lesser of the two, which is Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah.
It's a film I fucking love. I also, we had a great conversation about it once with Hermione. Was it Hermione?
Yeah, Hermione Flavia.
Hermione Flavia was on the show on our Atlantic Screen Connection Next show that we ran during the summer, and she hated the film. She never understood where the characters came from, and I thought that was so funny, because it's true. I get it. I totally understand. It's something that you gotta. It just depends on how in your face the mistakes in this film are. That if they fly in the face of everything you stand for, then you're gonna hate it. I get that, and you're maybe supposed to hate it. I think you kind of should. But yeah, I mean, it's still my favorite character study of the year. Lee Chandler is both a terrible person and someone with whom we ultimately sympathize with. Moreover, the film is actually darkly hilarious, and I think that's the real thing. I laughed my way through this film so much. Because it had such a...
twisted fuck.
No, it's like, there's miserable moments, absolutely. I cried as well, but like at the same time, there's so many absurd clashes and butting of heads, and I lost it so many times. So I've never seen an Oscar film I laughed as hard as I laughed at Manchester by the Sea. But yeah, I know it wins a kind of preference there. I've never seen that kind of balance done before. I think it's deeply complex. It's one of many films I'll be talking about that deal with human empathy and the challenges that come with that. But I absolutely adored it. I look forward to seeing it again, and I don't want it to go unsaid because of how deeply moved I was by it. And I didn't get to mention it last year. I don't want to give it a fucking honorable mention when I do believe it's still one of the best films of 2017. So
for you guys,
yeah, put it on the list.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so number 6 on my list then is Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Is one of my favorite movies this year. I went to see it in IMAX. I think it was 3 times, and I loved it. I still love it. I just recently bought it, and I watched it again, and I loved it again. And it's just one of the most carefully crafted films that I've seen in 2017. The story, the way that it's structured is absolutely fascinating. The performances are really, really great. I can understand why people consider this one probably one of Christopher Nolan's coldest films, because it has nothing to do with it's one of those.
It's still got his trademark optimism by the end, but it does revel more in the misery of the scenario.
Exactly, yeah.
Than his other
I can
films.
understand it. The color palette lends itself to that anyway.
Absolutely.
It looks fucking cold.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, everything in it is just gorgeous. The way that it's made, the way that it's structured. And so, I mean, we have a show on it. We had a great time talking about it. And so if you guys want to know what our real thoughts about Dunkirk are, I'd invite you guys to go listen to our episode on Dunkirk. And if you don't, well, that's not a big deal. All I can do is recommend it. Because this will be a film that is going to be not only studied, but it's going to be considered one of the best all-time war films ever put on screen. 50 years from now, people are going to be talking about Dunkirk, whether it's going to be positive or negative, because there has been negative commentary about it, especially with how they handled the French in the film. But as Christopher Nolan has gone on record as saying, this is not necessarily supposed to be a historical, accurate depiction of what happened at Dunkirk, but more of the fantasy and the legend that there is of Dunkirk. And that's why it's shaped somewhat like a fairy tale, because That's how it lives in the minds of people. But he wanted to tell that story as opposed to be historically accurate. And I think that that's a really brave move on his part because he is a storyteller. And just getting the message of Dunkirk out there was something important to him. And I think that we're all beneficial for actually seeing the film. It's a solid one.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I have my problems with it. So that's why it's not featuring on any of my lists. I can't not shake the non-fantasy of it. I still have my problems that fantasy weighed up against the reality it's very easy to say, oh, just imagine it being this way. You know, like I can't separate that two. That's, to me, that affects me, but that's a person by person kind of thing. Sometimes that won't matter so much. I cannot flaw, the way this film's portrayed, the actual story it tells within itself is gorgeous. It's great. I absolutely, I cannot fault a single production about it. I totally agree. People should absolutely see it. That would be neither here nor there at any rate. The other film, from the 2016 Oscars is La La Land. It's Moonlight. Did your heart skip?
I was ready to walk away.
Yeah. Oh no, I didn't like La La Land. Come on. No, yeah, great, but I love Moonlight. Yeah, absolutely. It is the better of the two Oscar films, I believe. Not the one I'll watch more. I'll grant you. I think I'll easily revisit the humor of Manchester by the Sea before I ever delve into the depths of the identity crisis on show in Moonlight. But I think it is a perfectly paced, perfectly told story. I think it's one of those films, like 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when the political background evaporates, hopefully, please, and we all get better with the black and white divide and how that even affects this character in some way, shape, or form.
Right, yeah.
I still think that even as a period piece of today, of any day, is gorgeous because of what the character goes through. So relatable, and when I don't think there's been so many identity crisis films in 2017. I think it's kind of like a cultural shift right now that people are kind of wondering who the fuck they are. Moonlight was one of them. And I think probably the best of them. Chiron's struggles with his own identity in the face of his choices will always connect with people on some form of level. And for that, it did for me. And I wept openly throughout this fucking film. I think it's gorgeous, and I have such beautiful memories of being there. But yeah, Moonlight, gorgeous film, easily top 10 of the year.
I can't add anything to that because Moonlight was one of my favorite films of last year as well. I hadn't seen it when we did our list.
That's right.
But I saw it this year too, but because it's a 2016 film for me, I can't add it to my list. But I could just support what you're saying 100% because it is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous movie. All right, number 5 on my list. Same as last year, it's going to be a docu-series where last year I was talking about OJ Made in America. This year I am talking about The Keepers. The Keepers is a fascinating docu-series. I think it's 8 episodes. I watched it in 2 different
sittings.
Sittings. I had started watching it on vacation, but then my girlfriend got really disturbed by the subject matter, which is child abuse by the church. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I can't handle any of this. This is too much. I can't understand how fucked up people are, why people in power will take advantage of people like this. And then it ends up in a murder as well because someone was supposed to talk about it.
Because sex, like taking the sex of people isn't enough of a fucking power abuse. Just killing people is the next high, isn't it? For fuck's sake.
Exactly. And all this tied to the church, something that's supposed to be an example of good, just gives me a little bit more of my relationship with the church is like the buildings look good. I don't give a shit about the rest, but and just seeing more things like this, even with Spotlight that came out last year, this just adds more to what has been going on. And I think that it's very timely for the sexual harassment that came out of, what we were talking about in terms of The Keepers and Spotlight. And this, like I said, in the Jason Goes for a Drives and Talks Movies video that I posted was the fact that Kathy Sesnick, please go with the Facebook page, go like their group. because they're still looking for the people, trying to uncover who actually murdered Kathy Selznick. And it's just wonderful to, but it just sucks because most of the people that are involved with this story, this happened in the 60s, are dead, and people that actually caused the abuse, and the lawyers that are involved in taking defending the church, innocent until proven guilty. My ass when it comes to this bullshit. This is people's lives we're talking about, and I think that the Keepers are doing a great job of showing that sometimes it's not rationale and law do not apply to destroying someone's life the way that these fucking priests did. Mm-hmm. So, and other people, I mean, they the way that they explained it is that you'd have these young girls, the priest had his office inside the school close to an exit. So the girls would be sent there to go confess to I don't know what. He would abuse them in the office. He would bring in some of his friends that were part of the police force and all that stuff, and they'd take advantage of these young girls. Some of them were young boys, and it's just fucking disgusting bullshit. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, fuck anything that has to do with whatever the church is spewing. And there's probably really good people in there, and there's some good messages, but the level of corruption that's involved with anything that has been done really outweighs the good that they've done to communities. Yeah, and I think that right now, what is fucking cool is that how timely is it that you'll have another church that we take part in that is called Hollywood that's being taken down right now as well. Yeah, you have these giant producers that are somewhat of a mirror of these priests that were supposed to be saying, these are the people in charge, these are the people in power, and look at how abusive and corrupt these motherfuckers were as well.
Absolutely.
I think that The Keepers speaks to how cultural shifts do in terms of systems of belief, and how sometimes people in power, no matter how much power they have, you have the power to speak out against the people that are doing these awful, awful, awful fucking things to you. And so I'm really glad that people have been coming together, rallying around the women that have been affected by the industry. And I'm really glad that like a show like The Keepers was able to come out in 2017 and speak to a larger problem of people in power. And so do yourselves a favor, watch The Keepers. It is a tough watch, but it is a beneficial watch in the end.
Oh, God. How to follow up that? Wait, I'm looking at this list like, I don't have anything nearly as miserable
I'll even
as that.
show you, look, I just wrote The Keepers, child abuse by church, sexual abuse in Hollywood, and then I just went off on a rant.
Unbelievable. But
it's a great show.
I don't know. Let's switch tone. Wonder Woman.
Good.
So I'm not gonna kid here. Like, Wonder Woman is an exceptionally flawed film. I think nobody is of the mind that this film is one of those perfect cinema experiences of any year. I think the film, even in its relation to the DCEU and its collapsing glory or anything like that, it doesn't matter. To me, it is the superhero movie. I've never seen a superhero movie that is so perfectly of its genre, you know? Yeah. It is, with all the warts, it is the genre incarnate, and despite all the reason in the world it had to be a movie made wholly for 2017, it chose to be a movie for history instead. It's a far more passionate story. It wanted its message to not be women can do it better, or even women can do it just as well, but sacrifice and empathy are the two most important traits that all human beings need to learn in order to make this world better. I mean, there's such a rally cry, there's such a war cry to make this film something perfectly just of its time, and there is a necessity for films to be that in this year and next year and the years to come, especially for women in all avenues of life. But Wonder Woman, the woman, was more integral to character and personal relations, something that you embody, and that is that you can look at your fellow man, see it bad, and still try to make it good, no matter what scenario you're in, no matter what end of the fence you end up on. And that's gorgeous and beautiful, and it has no right to be so well told in this blockbuster slow motion action film where a woman kicks the shit out of fucking the Fritz. You know, like, it's like, it's messy because all of that is kind of, there's a lot of counterintuitive imagery and messages throughout, but the big overarching message never lost me for a second. I don't have the problem that people have with the third act at all. The final battle with and it's goofy. I'll give you that. It is definitely goofy that we get David Thewlis little pasty little face peeking through a giant helm.
I will destroy you.
I don't care.
How else are you supposed to deliver that line?
Yeah, exactly. I think he does a really good job because he knows he has to ham it up. Like, he is playing that hatred incarnate, you know, that negative nature of humanity in a person, that whispering voice that tells people to do bad. I love that. I think that there's no other way to play that and have it stick with the audience than have it big and stupid looking, you know, and then have Wonder Woman take off her bracelets and fucking beat the shit out of him. I love it. You know, like, that's comic books to me. That's the absence of nuance. I think there's a place for that in big spots in cinema lists and Oscar glory, whatever the fuck that is. I think Wonder Woman deserves a spot and a slice of that action. I'm not going to argue it. I'm not really. There are films that do better with less. You know, like, but I don't care. I think that there's no superhero film that spoke to me louder than Wonder Woman this year. Take all the things I love about superhero films, all the messiness, cram it into one weird-ass, disjointed mess of a film, filled it with likable characters and weird stereotypes, and still made it work, you know? Like, I loved it. I mean, I came out fucking punching the air after I seen that film in fucking Las Vegas when I seen it, and I seen it a second time with Maria, who was totally meh about it.
She seems meh about a lot of things.
Totally seen it exactly as it really should be seen, I guess, because it is a mess. But I don't care. I don't care. It's one of my favorite films of the year, and I'll fight you on it. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of films you're fighting people on.
Yeah,
now.
fuck you. Luke Skywalker. I'll fight you about how they handled him in The Last Jedi. So fuck you.
Speaking of which, that's number 4 on my list.
It's on mine too.
Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yep.
I don't. It's not a perfect film, obviously, but at the same time, I think it's a perfect film for what it needed to be. And the more I think about the film, the higher it goes up on the list. Mm-hmm. It is right there, neck and neck with Empire Strikes Back for me right now. I am high on what's been done in this movie. I'm very glad because it's a promising direction for where Star Wars can be headed. And like I said on the episode itself, it's part of a religion that I believe in, that I love, even if Lee thinks it's stupid shit.
And I do. But I love that stupid shit all the same. I mean, it has its place in my heart too. I can't deny a film that it conflates dying for others as the ultimate sacrifice and say that that's not important to me.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I'm not going to shit on this just because it's a Star Wars, because it lacks the nuance of a Moonlight. This film is important to me, and I think important to a lot of other people, and I think has, again, like Wonder Woman, messy. It has no right to be as good as it is, but it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful film, and I keep getting annoyed that I only got to see it twice before Maria told me I had to stop, and now I'm just waiting to see it again when it gets out on fucking DVD or something. And then the cycle begins. Who stops me then? I mean, that's. But I'm so excited. I've not had that feeling where I'm just ready to revel in something again, like in a maybe unhealthy way.
Yeah, I agree with it. I've seen it 4 times, like I said, and I'm planning on going back maybe once or twice. And the only reason I'm going back is not only because I love the movie, is because I won't have the chance to experience it on a big screen like this again. You know, going to see it in IMAX here is just such a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I want to have that again before I'm condemned to watching it on my TV screen at home, you know? And so this is giant space opera battles, so much conflict, and it looks great. And I mean, you know, people have been shitting on it. We didn't address it on the show, but we can address it a little bit here. And I'm kind of tired of that discourse of like, oh, it ruined my childhood. What kind of a shitty childhood did you have in the first place? If a movie's taking it apart, get a fucking life. People are saying that it's a divisive movie, and no, it's because the crybabies cry really loud. Have you guys? Absolutely. I went to visit one of my friends this weekend, okay, and he has a newborn. The kid's not even a year old yet. And we're 4 adults in the room with the child, okay? And once the child starts crying, everyone shuts up. That's exactly how divisive Star Wars is. It's just because the crybabies are louder than everybody else that's trying to defend the film that have a rational way of thinking of things. So if you think that Star Wars has ruined your childhood, go away. Just leave Star Wars to the people that are actually having a good time, okay? Or better yet, watch the ones that please you. Just shut the fuck up. No one cares. Okay? I had a great time watching it. You had a great time watching it. It's a fucking movie. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Don't go out and start being completely insensitive. Just because you have a computer and you can type these things doesn't mean you should do it. And that's the problem with having an opinion now. I can't stand this shit anymore.
But what I'm excited about is that a year from now, nobody will fucking know what this shit is about. Nobody will know what the tweets that say there were issues with The Last Jedi we're talking about, because this conversation will be dead. Right, so what's your next
Last
pick?
Jedi was fantastic.
Yeah, go watch it. Next, what's your next pick, Jason?
Okay, so my number 3 is Mother!
Mother was an honorable mention that I politely didn't bring up because I knew the absence of it in your honorable mentions meant it was somewhere high.
I love this fucking movie. The more I think about it, the more I had a great time. And I've rewatched it 3 times since, and Jesus Christ, is it ever a fun movie. Yeah. It is demented, and is demented in all the right ways that is going to tickle my brain. The same way as I really enjoyed Good Time, I enjoy Mother unabashedly that way. Is there a really strong message into it? Is it a little naive? Sure. But it's the way that it's made that's just so much more fascinating. And I had a great discussion with you about it as well. And it was a show that we got a lot of
parts of the film. I think that because it's so hugely interpretive and because of how people reacted to it, like to Feist it was so positive to see people engaging in it in a way to try, like, I know how to fucking work it out, or I know it, it was like a puzzle for people. Which, maybe in the first time might be counterintuitive to people's enjoyment. That's here nor there. The point is that it was, for us at least, a really good time picking it apart, piecing shit together. We had a really good time about it. I think we all got theories that we enjoyed, but it's so open that you can go into it and read it totally different from what we were saying, and we encourage that, and that's it. It is easily one of the most fun experiences of 2017. I will never dismiss that.
And it goes to show just Darren Aronofsky's prowess as a director. This guy took so many risks in doing it, but the organization that went into making the film is another testament to how talented this guy is. The performances he can always extract the most insane performances out of all of his actors. I mean, look what he did with Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler. Again, Natalie Portman in Black Swan. Anything that he had to do in Requiem for a Dream. Look at how much he made Hugh Jackman cry in The Fountain. Everything is just so insane. There's so much fucking passion, which is a word I don't necessarily use a lot because I don't necessarily, it's a cop-out, but I'll use it here because it's just the way I feel about it. I think this is a very passionate film about a man who's fucking angry, and he just decided to share his anger with you and let you deal with it. So this is a purging of emotions, and I loved every minute of it.
Absolutely. Again, honorable mention for me. Wasn't exactly top 10. There were a couple of films I just rated higher than it. It was definitely in the conversation, but it didn't happen. But yeah, okay, moving on. I'll talk about the other film that I'm pretty sure you hadn't seen. You said you hadn't seen. It's The Florida Project.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Oh, cool.
Fuck, I love Florida Project. I absolutely fucking adored it. Again, I keep bringing it up, like human empathy. How does one deal with that? In these divisive times, I think we're learning how people have such a lacking when it comes to human empathy. At least when it comes to their developed ability to empathize with others. And I think Florida Project not so much presents a case to how to learn how to get good at empathy, but it is a perfect barometer test for how developed your empathy is at that moment, because there's a lot of negatives in it, and there's a lot of positives in it that you kind of have to wrap your head around because it's pretty much real, For those who don't know the story, it's about a project. It's about a motel run by Willem Dafoe, in which the story centers actually around these children who live with their sort of mothers in this motel, and it's all very run down. One of the main girl's mother, in fact, is basically relying on her friends and her contacts to get her a wage week to week. And you get to see a lot of the kind of desperate things she does to get money to keep a place for a roof for her daughter to live under.
Right.
And it doesn't go too much into like the backstories of these characters. It doesn't tell you how they got there. It's just how they are there. And that's more important because you're supposed to see that and go, fuck, this is just shit. You know, nobody should have to put up with this shit. And even if they have a communal spirit, and even if they lift each other up, and how it kind of at times breaks apart, how it affects the kids, and how sometimes and the weird things in between, like maybe that mother is scrapping from job to job because of the decision she's made on her life. But it's hard to fault how great a mother she is to her daughter, how wonderful a relationship they have. Even, and then there's also an argument to say, is that doing the daughter more damage than good? Having that kind of sugar-coated relationship, there are points where a little responsibility would have kicked in and changed things a bit, maybe. But it's not like a moral story. It's just an experience. It's just one of those, here it is. These are how these people go day to day. If you ever want to understand that person who rambles to themselves down the street, or how they go about their day to day, what they go through, and the decisions they make, and where it might be coming from, this is just kind of perfect at summarizing that insider view in such a way that I believe doesn't sugarcoat anything. And on top of that is mostly wanting you to sympathize or at least empathize with these people, to give them a little give them a break, you know? Yeah, these are usually the people in society that rub people up the wrong way, and people don't take the time to actually think about them and their lives and how they get to where they were, even though they're assholes to you.
Right.
And you kind of, maybe we could do better, maybe they could do better, maybe it's the system behind it all that's forced them to be in this position, maybe it's their parents, maybe it's something else, you know, it could be a million and one things. Not important. It's just laid bare, and you kind of just have to go from there. I think the key element to how it's an optimistic film, or at least a film that centers on how we should be trying to improve ourselves, is in the way that Willem Dafoe's character, who is this one of the loveliest guys on earth. He does everything in his power to keep these people happy. He himself has a threshold that he has to deal with. He has to weigh up the good and bad day to day. He's just in the worst position you could ever imagine somebody being in. And he does put a smile on it, and he does get on with it, because it is where he is, and it is what he does, and that's just his life, and he's a good person, and he wants to reflect what is a good person in these crazier, hard to define times. It's just, I could never make a film like this. I could never write a film like this. I could never see myself a part of a film like this. But I admire it so much, and I loved how it ends, and I loved the characters. I have so many fond memories of it, and I love Willem Dafoe's character, most importantly. It's a great scene where he tackles a shady character who approaches the kids. It's one of the best scenes of 2017. I loved the film, and I think everybody should see it.
Very cool. All right, so that leaves us with 4 films to talk about.
Maybe. I mean, unless there's 2 in common.
So I don't know. Do you want to shoot first? Do I shoot first? Because the last 2 I have to talk about are pretty much neck and neck. They're tied because I react to them differently. Mm-hmm. One gets me a little bit more emotional, whereas the other one gets me a little bit more excited with regards to filmcraft and how the message is shot out.
I'll spoil it now. These are the exact same 2 remaining films on my list.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's awesome.
I already know what you're picking. So
very cool.
Take us away.
What do we go for? Okay, take us away. All right. Well, the 2 films that I guess now that I know, because I remember I showed you and you didn't tell me what yours were. So now this is even better. Both Jordan Peele's Get Out and Taylor Sheridan's Wind River.
Yeah.
They're the 2 movies we're going to talk about. Which one do you want to talk about first?
I need emergency assistance.
What's your location?
The Wind River Indian Reservation.
I'm Jane Banner, FBI.
Welcome to Wyoming. You by yourself?
It's just me.
That's Corey Lambert. He's the one who found the body.
This is a homicide.
I knew that girl. She's a fighter.
They have 6 officers to cover an area the size of Rhode Island. Maybe you can help.
I only know what the tracks say.
What is it that you do again?
I hunt predators.
So why don't you come hunt one for me then? Why would a teenage girl be out here? What's she running from?
You're looking for clues, but you're missing all the signs.
Shouldn't we wait for backup?
This isn't a land of backup, Jane. This is a land of you're on your own.
Oh my God.
You won't get the answers you're looking for, no matter what you find.
Why would your daughter run from home?
I don't know why. He didn't tell me.
Out here.
You cannot blink. Not ever.
This place. What it takes from us. What it took from you.
I got lucky.
Luck lives in the city.
Get your hand off that weapon!
Luck don't live out here.
Let's talk about Wind River. I think it's the easier of the two.
It is, yeah. Okay, so Wind River shot up to the top of my list fast. When I sat down to watch, I'd heard so many good things about it. And it was the first film that Taylor Sheridan directed. He's the one who wrote Hell or High Water, which is my favorite film of last year. Mm-hmm. And when I watched Wind River, I had the same exact reaction as when I watched Hell or High Water, whereas I wanted to watch the movie straight away for a second time. Now, my girlfriend had just walked into the apartment. She said, "Oh, well, wait for me. We'll watch it tomorrow again." And I was like, "Okay, good." So I put it on and I watched it with her, and it's just so fucking good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, and I mean, from an emotional payoff for me, when you look at how the story is, you know, you'll have this white guy who's on who lives on a Native American reservation, and you go there, and it's basically the most desolate, depressing place to be because no one gives a shit about this culture anymore, and it's a sad fucking thing. They're not being taken care of, and there just so happens to be a murder on the reservation, and the basic idea of the movie is to show that these murders that happen to these young women, there are statistics, but no one's keeping track, so these women go missing, and no one really knows what happens. It's just part of the life in that part of the country. And the way that Sheridan shapes this is he does it very carefully. This isn't a preachy film. This is a film that's just showing you, as a matter of fact, how it's done, why it's done, and who are guilty of doing this. And again, these are abusive males in power taking all that and just kind of turning it into something super fucking sour because they can't control the stupid fucking urges that they have. So Wind River is Jeremy Renner plays a hunter, and that's exactly what he does in the movie. He tries to hunt down who is responsible for this young woman's murder. Mm-hmm. And the FBI agent played by Elizabeth Olsen, just goes to show, you know, how they send the closest recruit with the FBI just because, you know, why would we send someone that's actually really well trained and, you know, investigating this type of thing? We're just going to send you the person that's just out of the academy, that's kind of in over her head, that has no real rapport with any of the individuals there.
Again, I would be against that sort of narrative where they betray the woman as the weak person in this. But again, it is totally overshadowed by the fact that there's so much about strength, and particularly female strength, in this film.
Yep.
That the fact that this is a woman is just to show the culture in and of itself, that they don't train these women. They don't tap into that strength in that bureaucratical hierarchy that is the FBI or those federal bureaus or so on. They don't actually take on and evaluate properly what each person is capable of, because we see it in a lot of cases. Elizabeth Olsen is, as for someone with a very lack of training, plays someone who has a good amount of instincts in her to keep, at least for survival and investigation, and just her training is what keeps getting in the way of her. It's more that part of her personality. But I think even just regarding the film, the greater message, like it almost reads like a thesis on strength, you know? Both pro and con. Like the pros are like camaraderie and friendship and kinship and bravery and love and intelligence, and family is a huge one, and nothing is sugarcoated. It's a very like bitter and sorrowful story. These people have to brace hard against hard times, and God, there's so much empathy going around. It kills me. As you were saying, juxtaposed to that is like the negative of strength, which is like that bureaucracy that doesn't see anything because it's too powerful, and the toxic masculinity portrays the wrong kind of strength, the physical empowerment over the mental or the intellectual or the empathetical. Those are the real traits in humanity that deserve our attention and our development, and this muscle-headed horror that we get from these people who are just jacked up and then sent out to the world to do whatever the fuck they want is miserable and entirely lacking in empathy, and it is hard. It is a hard watch, man. It is a very fucking hard watch.
But it was great to see, that reversal of where, predator becomes prey. And I thought that was interesting. It's like, what happens when the roles are reversed? How do you react to that situation? And being able to get through that and seeing that, having the males realize the terror that they have put women through is kind of satisfying in a way where you're like, there you go. That's exactly what you deserve.
Yeah, it's got some catharsis that I have never felt in a film like this. I have never wanted some characters to just get fucking killed on screen more than in this film. Like, I was just like, take them somewhere, teach them a fucking lesson. Do it somehow, please. Because I have had to watch some terrible shit, and these people deserve worse.
Taylor Sheridan's really good at saying, like, if you really want to get rid of people, take them up in the mountains. That's exactly what he did in Hell or High Water, and that's exactly what he does in Wind River. But I love that, and it's juxtaposed. There's a lot of wonderful imagery of how the winter is cold. It goes with the relationships that people have between each other as well. He uses the imagery very well. There's also the fact that there's going to be these cougars that are outside in the wilderness that are the predators that are showing them how to hunt. And at the same time, when you look at how social structure actually works as well, then you have men training men to be predators as well. The levels of craft involved make him deserve the best director accolade that he got at the Cannes Film Festival. Yeah. I know that there are some people out there that said that he still had a lot to prove as a director, and I think that you just stuck your foot in your fucking mouth. And so I really, really think that this is a solid film. If this is where he's headed and this is his beginning as a director,
I mean, crazy.
Hell, you can't.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a knockout.
He's only on par.
Yeah.
Look at Jordan Peele. We're talking about first-time directors this year.
Yeah.
Greta Gerwig is with Lady Bird as well. That seems to be doing a great time. Kevin Phillips with Super Dark Times. Now we've got Jordan Peele and Taylor Sheridan that are actually... Jesus fucking Christ, shit, this is great. It's a fun little revolution that's going on right now. So watch Wind River. Buy it, watch it, watch it.
Love it. No, we've said it. So get out.
You got your toothbrush?
Check.
Do you have your deodorant?
Check.
Do you have your cozy clothes?
Got that.
What?
Do they know I'm black?
Should they?
You might wanna,
Mom and Dad, my black boyfriend will be coming up this weekend. I just don't want you to be shocked that he's a black man.
I ain't never seen you like this before, bruh. Meeting families and taking road trips. Don't come back all bougie, man. Come back, get your damn pants up to your damn stomach.
So you guys coming up from the city?
Yeah, we're just heading up for the weekend.
Can I see your license, please?
He wasn't driving.
I didn't ask who was driving. I asked to see his ID.
Call me Dean and you're hungry, my man.
So how long has this been going on, this thing? We hired Georgina and Walter to help care for my parents. When they died, I couldn't bear to let them go.
Do you smoke in front of my daughter?
I'm gonna quit.
She'd take care of that for you.
How?
Hypnosis.
I'm good, actually.
You ready for this?
I'm back in the beat.
So look, I go do my research. Apparently, a whole bunch of brothers been missing in this suburb. But it's cool. Bro, how you not scared of this, man?
Good to see another brother around here.
Chris was just telling me how he felt much more comfortable with my being here.
Get out. Sorry, man.
Get out! Yo!
Rose, we gotta go.
Is everything okay?
Rose, the keys. Just get the keys.
I don't know where they are.
Rose?
Sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
Mine is a terrible thing to waste. Terrible thing to waste.
too many white people, I get nervous.
No. No. No.
A bomb is a terrible thing to waste.
I think it's weird, man. It's got every indication, and I hope it and I feel it that it's going to be one of those films that just stands the test of time. You know, it's just one of those all-time look back classic films that there's no debate. Whatever perspective you come in from, you'll get something right out of Get Out. As a horror film, as an indictment of the black experience in white America or white anywhere, and just even as a quote-unquote comedy, I mean, it does have funny moments. It has levity against the misery. I wouldn't call it a comedy, but it has funny moments. I have to
apologize to David Hart there, because, you know, a lot of people are coming out and saying it's a comedy, and I chastise him on Twitter for kind of twisting my words, but then I realized that everyone else agreed except for me, so I'm probably in the wrong. Because I didn't see it that way, but I mean, if I'd have to rewatch and try to pinpoint what the comedy is, I think it's uneasy. It's maybe dark humor in a sense, but at the same time, I didn't laugh. You know, I was just like, what the fuck? But anyway.
No, I did laugh. Probably at the points for this, but there's a comic relief character in there, and he made me laugh. The rest of it was shock and horror and proper, like, mouth agape. I cannot believe this is happening.
Oh, yeah, his friend. Okay, yeah, his friend's funny.
Yeah, it is less about where black people fit in, and again, kind of like Detroit, how fucking fucked up the mentality of white people are, like, as a majority, in America, and how they treat other races and black people. It's so good at getting to the heart of that fucking issue in a very metaphorical, very relatable way, and yet not actually saying in the words what it is really about, you know? It's just fascinating. It's a fascinating fucking film. But most importantly, the film is, like, it's just downright perfect in execution. I don't think you can really knock that.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's what I loved about it, is that this is this generation's The Shining. That's why it's going to stand the test of time, is that people are going to revisit this and keep finding layers to it. I mean, just on my initial watch of Get Out, I was looking at what Peele was doing, and I was like, how the fuck are you including all this imagery? I mean, just look at the shaving cream scene at the beginning of the movie. The idea that he's going to visit his white relatives now, and he's actually putting that white shaving cream on him. He's whitening himself in order to get into actually, you know, just little things like that. The cotton in the chair that he uses at the end,
God.
you know,
yeah,
that has
right.
that whole black experience with regards to how the cotton works. And he uses it to defend himself. He uses the cotton as an empowerment, something that was used in slavery to dehumanize the black people. He uses it as empowerment to save himself by putting the cotton in his ears. Anya Stanley, the woman who writes for Birth Movies Death occasionally, put an interesting article about the black buck, the fact that there's a buck on the fact that he hits the deer at the beginning of the movie, but also that there's a buck in the room at the end. You know, goes to talk about a lot of the experience and how well, I won't give you what it is, but I mean, I want you guys to go and read that. So I might actually put the link in the show notes, which is it's a fascinating article on how African Americans have been treated throughout time. And that's it. Just the amount, like you said, the precision that there is, the confidence in how Jordan Peele is actually going through the movie is just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
This is a great fucking story. The social commentary is there. The levels are there. He's actually playing in the frame. You can see that there are messages there. If you just choose to press pause there, you can dissect every fucking scene that is going through. Even the opening sequence when he goes to visit the family, all the pictures on the wall detail exactly what's going to happen throughout the entire movie. It's beautiful.
Yeah, even the opening scene of the entire film, the abduction of Lakeith Stanfield's character. I mean, it's an indictment of the tone of the film, and it has every single element of what's about to happen summarized in 2 minutes. It's just so fucking good. It's like surreal and absurd, and it is funny, but it's dark and it's scary as balls, and it's a great concept, and it works on too many levels that it's kind of like, it is the making of those classic films, because you look at those classic films and say, how did they get it all so right? And Get Out is exactly that example. How did he get it so right?
And that's the funny thing is, I can't find a fault in it.
No.
You know, to me, it's a perfect film. Even down to the sound design. Just how, what reaction did you have when you heard a fucking spoon clink in a goddamn cup? After that, you're just like, oh shit, what the fuck?
There's a noise, or even almost an absence of noise when you fall into the sunken place, that boom, and it just hits you in the pit of your heart, and you just feel that you go with them, and you're just looking at it, but you know that it feels like zoning out and being out of your body. It's just beautiful. That's so many great touches. How?
Yeah, I mean, that takes, I don't know how long it took him to write this, and how he was basically on set thinking, okay, this is what I'm saying, but this is what I'm showing. Yeah. Because there is a fun divide between what's actually being said and shown, and it's great because that's how the levels work. It's just so fucking creepy. When you watch it again, you see that he kind of peppered out throughout the entire fucking main narrative little clues as to what the hell's going on. Just the way that the dialogue is shaped, and you're like, I can't even find that in most films now. That's how good this movie is. So yeah, Get Out, I mean, nothing but praise. Nothing but praise. Yeah. The same thing for Wind River. They're tied neck and neck, but for very different experiences for me. One has got me more on an emotional level, and the other one's got me more on a cinematic level where it's just prowess.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did it. We've somehow got through it. Top 10.
Yeah, man. But that's it. That's it for us, man. 2017 was a really good year for movies. Absolutely. And I'm looking forward. I have so many movies to look forward to from 2017 that I haven't seen yet. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that. A personal shopper, like 3 Billboards. Florida Project is probably one I'm going to watch this week. And, you know, sadly, it won't make my list because
too late.
I won't have seen it. But I'll tweet it out. Just replace number 4 or 5. Doesn't matter. We'll see.
Yeah. Or didn't make the cut. Either way, it doesn't matter.
Right. So the rundown for me, the 10th spot will have The Post and Call Me By Your Name. Then it goes to Good Time, Icarus, Super Dark Times, Dunkirk, The Keepers, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Mother, Get Out, and Moon. Yeah. Those was the order.
I have no particular order. This is just a random collection of 10, so don't read too much into it. I printed them out on a page. I jumped about, so like literally this is just a list, a collection. Wind River, Star Wars The Last Jedi, The Florida Project, Song of Granite, The Red Turtle, Manchester by the Sea, Moonlight, Get Out, Wonder Woman, and God's Own Country. So check out all of those. They are super great.
That's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. We hope the show is not too long.
It will be.
We had a great time so far in 2017. So that's it. Look, here's to 2018. We already have a show out on Star Wars The Last Jedi. Go check that out, obviously. And that's it. Lee and I are going to be taking a break for a while. We don't know what the hell we want to talk about. Next, we still have the Guillermo del Toro retrospective that we have to finish. But like I said at the beginning, I need to clear my head. I have to find other things to do. I need to shape up my apartment. I make it look nice and whatnot. So I want to put movies on the back burner for a little bit, just so that I can kind of recenter myself and come back and ready to attack something that's going to be coming out sometime in February.
Yep, same here.
So that's it for us this week. Be sure to follow AtlanticSC on Twitter. Go like our Facebook page. Follow us on Instagram. We'd love to get your feedback there. We post a bunch of stuff there as well. You know what? We haven't had a review on iTunes in a long time, or even on SoundCloud. We'd love that if you guys would leave us a review.
Yeah,
it'd be fun. Cool. You know, get a couple of things that you guys haven't offered us up a Christmas present yet, or a Happy New Year's gift. So that'd be really awesome. I'd love that. Yeah, that'd be great. Just a couple of reviews. That'd be great. We haven't had a review in a long time.
So even if it's hateful.
But that's all I'd ask. I know we're not supposed to ask too much from our audience. I don't think we do. Maybe patience, because our shows are long.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
But other than that, that's it. My name is Jason Michael. I had a great time. Lee, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Lee Paul Brady. Same on Instagram. And then, just follow the site at AtlanticSC, or the website, AtlanticScreenConnection.com. We've got stuff there.
Coolio. So thank you very much to everyone who's been super kind to us this year, and fuck you to everyone who hasn't. Happy 2018, and we're going to see you guys sometime soon. We just don't know what our return date is. So stay tuned. Love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.